walk, but I have to walk somewhere.
That's not bad.
Like the shoes?
Yeah.
But he's also like,
I'm 23, so I'm still pretty heavy.
$700.
I'm like a
None of y'all have any other pair.
right now?
Yes.
I don't know about this for
So that's what, like, that's where my
Oh yeah, I wanted to get a pair.
and it was like,
salesman got me a free pair. You gotta get some Jordans.
They didn't have the right color.
Yeah, they didn't have the right color.
I have insurance. I have insurance on my body.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
We need to find you a hope.
Dang, dude.
I'm so behind on that too.
It's a little cold in here. Is it? Okay, I turned it to 70, but we'll see if that makes a difference. I don't know. Sometimes these thermostats don't do much around here. Okay, so let's finish up the discussion on long-term relationships today. That's my goal. And so I just wanted to recap. I know we ended on this slide, but ultimately the idea is that marketers often want to push customers and towards this strong relationship level, which your book characterizes as like the success level here. But at the same time, we need to recognize that not all customers are essentially of the same value, right, in terms of the value they bring to the firm. And we may not want to establish sound relationships with all customers, right? How many of you are aware of the 80-20 rule? What does that mean? Yes.
80% of your revenue comes from 20% of customers. And
Yeah. So it's this idea that, you know what, you've got a cohort of customers of who knows what percentage at the end of the day, but who are really going to be bringing in that value to the firm. And so marketers need to recognize that and certainly prioritize those customers and, hope that they're having and building strong relationships with that core group. So this chapter talks about drivers of customer relationships. And I want to say first that there are a lot of drivers of establishing sound customer relationships. Key drivers are oftentimes quality and value, the two things that are mentioned in your book. But there are actually a variety of different things that can promote relationship development. So first off, what is quality? Well, quality is considered the degree of superiority of a firm's offerings. So how great is this product or the service? And a key thing is that it's relative. When you judge the quality of something, you're judging it compared to competing offerings and also your internal standards, right? So, let's just say she expects out of her Chick-fil-A experience might be different than what she expects out of her Chick-fil-A experience. And so ultimately this comes down to a marketer's job is to not only understand their competitors, but also understand what are the customer's expectations, when it comes to quality and of that overall experience with the product or the service. And so to make sure that they're developing offerings that align with those expectations, or sometimes this actually gets at setting customers' expectations correctly. I'll give you an example, and I just want to say this. It is so important, I think, both in your working world and in dealing with customers to manage expectations. Because when expectations aren't met, that leads to dissatisfaction and sometimes surprises, and sometimes surprises aren't a good thing, right? So managing expectations is very critical, and I'll just give you this example because it happened yesterday. And this is in a work context, not in a customer context. I'll give a customer example later today. But I get called to a meeting, and the meeting is from 11:30 to 1. What do you expect? Imagine you've got a work meeting, it's from 11:30 to 1. You think they're gonna provide lunch? That's what I would expect, right? You know. So I get called to be part of this focus group. And so I said I would participate. And so I see they shared like the discussion guide or the questions they plan to ask the team. And so I wrote back and I said, oh, I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly, is lunch being provided? They said no. I said, oh, okay. And so I emailed the 2 people in the provost office who are overseeing this, and I said, hey, just want to let you know that I think a lot of participating faculty, when you host a lunch when you host a meeting from 11:30 to 1, they're going to expect lunch. So you might want to send an email out saying it's not being provided. So sure enough, they did that. But I will tell you, most people in that room thought lunch was going to be there. So again, just something as simple as that. Managing expectations is so important in your working life, in your life with serving customers. So you want to make sure you are setting expectations and then at least delivering on those expectations. So quality applies to at least 3 aspects of an offer. 1, the focal product itself, right? So form and utility plays a big role here, okay? And those features of the product. I think a great example of the core focal product quality is Apple. Do you know what today marks for Apple? 50 years in business. They had a really good clip on the news this morning about it, and if I could find it, I'll share it with you. But really cool. I think Affirm certainly has that Apple has created quality offerings, which has led them to have incredible customer relationships and very loyal customers. So we've got quality associated with the core product. We also have quality for service. Let me say this differs a little bit. Okay, so services are those intangible things that you buy, right? You can't take it home with you. And so how quality is oftentimes judged when it comes to services deals with the people. Okay, so who do they see in the service setting? So the other customers, the employees, the processes. So usually when we think about service delivery, there is a set order, okay, of events that happen. When that order gets disrupted, it can really affect perceptions of quality. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're going to the doctor let's just say the dentist. Anyhow. So what happens when you go to the dentist? You're in the waiting room, then what? Does the doctor call you back? Or dentist? Does the dentist call you back? No. Who does?
The hygienist.
The hygienist. Okay. So let's say the dentist calls you back. That might be like, oh, that's a little unusual, you know? And so that process got disrupted, and now it doesn't align with your expectations of what the process should look like, and it can affect your judgments of your overall service experience with that particular provider. So understanding the processes, these expectations, very important in services as well. And lastly, what plays a huge role oftentimes in judging service quality is the physical evidence or the things you see as a customer. Because oftentimes when customers can't judge a quality very easily, they make judgments based on what they see. So an example of this is, how great of a dentist you have, or how great of a doctor you have, or an attorney. Those services where you may not know a lot about what they do, but you're going to make the judgment of how great of a physician or lawyer or whatever it is, whoever it is, based on what you see. So I'll give you an example here. 2 dermatology offices. Okay? Which one are you going to prefer to go to? The left one? Which one do you think has the better doctor? Left, right? So this, honestly, like, I'm not, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, depends on how old the doctor on the right is.
Okay.
So if you go to the one on the right and the doctor looks like they've been doing it for longer than, I'm 30s, longer than I've been alive, then it's like, okay, they just haven't updated. So this was the place, but
Okay.
they've been able to stay in business for 30-something years, so, fine.
Mhm. Yeah, and so we make judgments all the time based on this physical evidence or what we see. Now, whether or not our judgments are correct, in this case, who's the better doctor? I have no idea, But I think it's a great example of how, as a marketer, we got to recognize how people are making assessments of their experience based on what they see. And so this is actually an office in, I think it's technically Vestavia Hills. It was the nicest, it's when I had Mohs surgery, I think is what it's called, because I had skin cancer right there. Fun stuff, not great. But this was the clinic, and I'm like, when I walked in here, I was like, this is the nicest clinic I've ever seen before. And so it was beautiful. They had these huge, when you walk through, this is like where the customers enter. You walk through, and then you go in that door, and they had this big window overlooking this hill, and it was fall time, so it was just really pretty. All the different leaves were changing colors, and it just was like very impressive. And then I thought, how are they getting all this money to pay for this beautiful facility? Like, do they really have that many patients, or are they really charging an arm and a leg? Like, how much is my copay going to be? When I walk out of here, how much am I going to owe? So anyhow, though, I think this is a great example, though, of how we use what we see to make assessments of things that we don't know. Another function of quality is the supplemental products. So those add-on products. So not the core product itself. So if you're an Apple user, maybe not the phone, but like the case or the charging cord or all those other things that you might buy that enhance your experience with the focal product. And supplemental products too can also be supplemental services. So when we talk about B2B, so businesses buying from other businesses or buyers buying or selling from other businesses, oftentimes these supplemental services or features are what drives the choice of a particular vendor. And it's what keeps them in the relationship. So these could be things like financing or servicing, maintenance, installation. All of those are supplemental products or services which might make an organization choose and stay with a particular provider. And lastly, quality is a function of the symbolic or experiential attributes that we have. So what does it mean to be a user of Apple? Or what does it mean to buy this particular brand or go to this particular provider? That sort of prestige, the image, the status, those sort of psychological associations can drive our quality perceptions as well. So ultimately, it comes down to, for marketers, we got to know how are our customers judging our quality, what's driving their decisions, and we also need to understand their expectations in terms of, what are their fundamental standards of the service delivery or of the product itself. The other driver your book talks about in terms of another driver of customer relationships is perceived value. And throughout this course, I've always described value as being equal to benefits received minus costs. Your book does it a little bit differently. It says it's benefits, or in this case, all of those three types of quality we just talked about on the last slide. So you've got core product quality, your supplemental product quality, and the experiential quality as the numerator divided by your costs. It doesn't matter which way you think of it, because at the end of the day, it represents the same thing. People want to get more and pay less, okay? So they want to feel like they're getting more than what they pay. So either they want the numerator to be higher than the denominator, or they want this number to be higher than that number, okay? So we've talked about the numerator. And let's talk about what the denominator might stand for. So first off, you've got transactional costs. This is what you immediately pay for something. And oftentimes it's not just the product itself. So for example, when you buy a new vehicle or a new to you vehicle at a dealership, what do you pay? You just pay the sticker price on the vehicle?
You have dealer fees associated with it.
Dealer fees, what else? Tax, registration, maybe insurance, your premium maybe went up. Maybe there's a document fee or a recording fee or an electronic filing fee. Lots of fees. When you buy a house, do you just pay the price that you see? No, right? You've got realtor fees, you've got legal fees, again, recording fees, all of those things, right? So all those are monetary costs that are part of the transaction, okay? So the immediate cost. But you also have life cycle costs too. So for a house, besides just buying the house, what other costs do you incur over the lifetime of having that home? Repairs and maintenance, like having to get a new roof or having to get a new water heater or a new dishwasher or whatever else it might be. So those are all life cycle costs. Think about repairs with your vehicle. So I'm talking about this in a consumer setting, but the same thing applies in the B2B setting too, is when companies buy, for instance, equipment, they're going to be looking at how much financing or how much these other fees are going to cost, along with how much is it going to cost us to have this equipment over the life cycle. Like copy machines, I will tell you, copy machines break down all the time. Okay? Anyone have experience with that? Yeah, okay. So life cycle costs there. Same thing with equipment. All sorts of equipment can break down. Trucks can break down, things of that sort. You've got non-monetary costs that need to get factored in too. Time is becoming more and more important to a larger segment of customers here in America. And so again, hence we see growth in convenience-oriented products. And so people are going to factor in, how much time is this costing me? How much effort am I having to put forth to do this? I'm going to give you an example of time and effort. Remind me to talk about this later if I forget. Risk. We've talked about how people oftentimes want to avoid risky purchases, and again, the importance of offering guarantees or warranties. And then opportunities, the cost of those foregone alternatives. So ultimately, these non-monetary costs can get factored into the what do I give up portion in this denominator. And those can be significant. And so marketers need to understand, what is going on in terms of what are we providing customers? What are the benefits they feel they're reaping versus what do they feel they're giving up? Because we know at the end of the day, people want more. They want to receive more than what they give up. So quality and value are said to drive customer satisfaction and be key drivers of customer relationships and loyalty. And as a marketer, yeah,
Your example in time and effort.
oh, yes, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. Okay, remind me, when we get to the lifetime value slide, this one, remind me to time and effort, okay? Thank you. Oh, no. Okay, lifetime value, remind me of that. Yay, okay. So we need to know, as a marketer, how are customers feeling, okay? What are their quality perceptions? What are their value perceptions? And understand that things can go wrong. And that what we expect as a firm may not be the same as what our customers expect. And we've talked about customer journeys in here, identifying those pain points. I think some of you did that with the Sephora case. That is critical to understanding customer satisfaction and where satisfaction may be fluctuating. And sometimes it's identifying where it's declining and identifying what we can do to fix that. So as a marketer, we need to look at, what can we control? And oftentimes what we can control is the core product. So we want to address those issues that are very critical. Again, it gets back at understanding what is making up a quality experience, because we want to make sure that we are excelling on that attribute or that experience or that factor so that we are offering a satisfying experience. And so sometimes it involves making corrections. It also it deals with managing customer expectations. I love it. This sounds crazy, but I love it when people tell me things I don't want to hear. Why do you think that is? What does it signal to me? They're honest. I can trust them. So, I think when marketers, for instance, if you go to build a house, a realtor might say, okay, right now the average build time is about a year and a half. The average cost is XYZ per dollar per square foot. And they might say, to be honest, like during COVID, there was serious supply chain issues. And to get equipment and get all of the different pieces that go into building a home took a lot of time. And so telling customers, hey, there's a delay on windows right now for 6 months. It's going to take an extra 6 months to build your house. This is the time frame we're looking at. This is the cost we're looking at. It's kind of same thing applies when it comes to a vehicle. I know I talked about buying a vehicle in this class, and I happened to call Toyota, and they said, oh, well, to get the Highlander that you want, it's probably going to take a couple months because you can't just get the one that you want. So I didn't buy it yet, but I was asking about information on it. So anyhow, just being honest about that. When a lawyer tells you, to set up a will is going to cost you this, but to set up a trust is going to cost you that, really appreciate knowing that. So managing those expectations, and not just on price, managing expectations about process too. Okay, how the process will unfold, whether it's the purchasing process, the installation process, what the product can actually do, right? You never want to, in sales, we talk about over-promising and under-delivering. Are you familiar with that concept? You don't want that to happen. That's not a good thing. And so very important right there. I think that quote illustrates the importance of managing customer expectations on what a particular product or service can do. And also educating the customer too. Making sure that they know how to use a particular product and service. Sometimes it gets back at offering satisfaction guarantees. And this can be aligned with the corporate vision or the internal climate we talked about. If we go back to service climate theory or the service profit chain, which talked about the importance of internal marketing in terms of your marketing towards your employees. Offering satisfaction guarantees makes it really easy for your employers to do something when you've got an unhappy customer. I think, like last night, I was at Publix, and they had a special deal on, it wasn't a BOGO. I think I had to buy 2 cases of LaCroix and I got 1 free. So I had 3 in my cart. And I really like the key lime flavor. Have you guys had the key lime LaCroix? Oh my gosh, it's so good. Y'all are missing out. Actually, that's good. Don't have it, so there's more for me. So the key lime LaCroix, it's you know what LaCroix water is? Okay, so it's the bright green can. It has a little bit of yellow on it. And I think it's the best. Well, they only had the regular one. And so I'm checking out, and I told, the lady as I'm, bringing out my 36 cans of LaCroix here, I was like, yeah, I really wanted the key lime, but yeah, I got the regular one because y'all were out. She goes, oh, well, we can do a rain check on that. And so I'll be able to get, once they get the key lime back in stock, I'll get the price that was offered yesterday because their deals end Tuesday night. So I guess on Wednesday new deals start. So I thought that was great. I'm like, how cool is that? That rather than me walking out the door with getting something out, like the lime is fine. Yes, it's not the same as a key lime. But now I'll be able to get the key lime at the special price at a later date once it comes in. So I thought, how easy Publix makes it for their employees to engage in service recovery. Very cool. So offering satisfaction guarantees or solid service recovery can really drive satisfaction. Make it easy for customers to complain. I know this sounds really weird, but how does making it easy for customers to complain help the company? Kevin, yeah.
By giving them a dedicated, directed forum to voice their complaint, you don't then have to worry about them going on social media and voicing their complaint, and thus making what could be a simple solve into a major PR problem.
Assuming they corrected it, right?
Right, but
yeah.
even if you don't, you can do enough things to mitigate their anger, even if you don't fully solve the problem, if you have a dedicated channel for it.
Yep.
Where if you don't, or it's very lackluster, it turns into someone writing a whole song.
Yeah.
About their guitar.
And things
or-
going viral, right? A song over a guitar, love it. Kevin's exactly right. Is that if customers feel like they have a voice and can complain, it helps the company identify, okay, if they acknowledge that they made a mistake, they can correct it. We talked about the service recovery paradox. Do you guys remember what that is? It's where, when there's a failure, the recovery strategy by the firm, so how the firm corrects the problem, can actually boost customer satisfaction and loyalty well beyond the original levels before any problem occurred. So complaining allows allows the firm to possibly engage in service recovery that builds satisfaction and loyalty. It also prevents the problem from escalating or prevents the problem or the issue of things going viral. And oftentimes, if it happened for one customer, it likely happened for a variety or more other additional customers. It's not just usually happening to one. And so you can provide a better experience for your other customers and prevent issues for future customers. And also provide very valuable insights to what might be driving these problems as well. So a lot of benefits for getting customers to complain. Invest in customer success. So again, a lot of this deals with educating customers so they know how to use their products and services so they're satisfied. I think back to the days when I got my first smartphone and I didn't know how to use it, that education. And now we've got YouTube videos, and oh my gosh, I love YouTube because it has taught me so much. But firms who invest in customer success, invest in training customers on how to use it, training employees on how to educate customers. very important. Creating relationship programs. So we talked about the different types of marketing relationship programs. And so customers generally like to be rewarded. They like getting free products or a free coffee or a free sandwich, right? Those financial reward programs. They like feeling special. They like feeling known, which comes with those social programs. And then they also like things to be easy. And they like that seamless experience that comes with structural programs. And so those relationship programs are very critical to managing and driving customer satisfaction. And lastly, companies should make customer satisfaction measurement an ongoing priority. Because as we've talked about, things change, right? Who's a satisfied customer today may not be a satisfied customer tomorrow. Things happen along the customer journey that affect customer satisfaction. And firms can't do anything about it if they don't know. And so it's very important for firms to have an ongoing, or making satisfaction an ongoing priority. And I feel like that's something Starbucks has done well. And a lot of the firms, mostly, the firms that are on the American Customer Satisfaction Index, who score very highly, they certainly do this very well. So let's talk about how you measure customer satisfaction. We're going to talk about customer lifetime value. There are many different ways to measure it, first of all. But one way to measure customer satisfaction is by an assessment of lifetime value. So how much is the customer worth financially over his or her lifetime as a customer of your organization? Okay, so satisfaction, usually there's a correlation, right? Highly satisfied customers tend to have higher lifetime values. But it can change. A bad experience can lead to dissatisfaction and a steep decline in a customer's lifetime value. So again, you need to measure it, and it needs to be an ongoing priority. Average order value. Okay, another way to measure customer satisfaction is the average transaction size. Okay, the average order amount or dollar amount. What I don't have up here on this slide is these are metrics beyond traditional survey metrics. So oftentimes you might check out and they might ask you a single question. How was your experience today on a 10-point scale? Or maybe they show you a bunch of faces with frowns to a flat line to a very smiley face and ask you to indicate what, demonstrates your experience today. Think about how clean the bathrooms were at the Atlanta airport. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
The little screen.
Yeah.
Pick the face.
Yes, you pick the face, right? So oftentimes customer satisfaction is measured through those survey metrics. Very, very common. Oftentimes you might do focus groups sometimes with a key group of customers. But beyond those traditional metrics, marketers are oftentimes looking at these metrics as well. Customer acquisition and retention costs. Like I said at the beginning of this course, usually it's cheaper to retain a customer than to acquire a customer. So you want to be looking at, how much are we spending on acquiring customers? How much are we spending on retaining customers? If we start to see a dramatic shift in how much we're spending to retain customers, for example, that signals a problem. Why are our customers wanting to leave? Okay, so we want to monitor those. We might want to look at a conversion rate. So a conversion rate looks at what percentage of our visitors actually convert or buy, in other words. So of these exposed, how many are clicking to purchase and checking out? Okay, so conversion rates are important. Retention rates. Okay, how many customers or what percentage of customers are repeat customers? They're buying again more than once. The churn rate is the percentage of defecting customers. How many of our customers are actually leaving, okay, or defecting to a competitor? We might also look at the customer recovery rate. This looks at the percentage of customers who leave and then come back. So oftentimes with subscriptions, you might leave, but then suddenly you're getting offers to come back again. Have you guys had that experience before? Right? Like HelloFresh does it. A lot of, streaming services do it, right? They want you back as a customer. So companies will be looking at what's their recovery rate, because if you jump back in, right, that indicates that, okay, they were satisfied enough that they're willing to come back. Referrals. Again, customers are oftentimes worth more when considering how much new business they are bringing into the company. In other words, they might spend and have an average transaction size or an annual spending rate of, let's just say $100 a year, but they're bringing in maybe $500 of business a year by referring new customers. I go to my hairstylist maybe 3 to 4 times a year. But this year alone, I've brought her 5 new customers. Okay? I would say my referral rate, and some of my referrals are people who get their hair colored every month. That's a lot of money. So my referral value is way more than my actual transaction value. And marketers need to be mindful of that, and in measuring satisfaction, they're going to be looking at their referral value too. Because you must be happy if you're referring other customers to a particular organization. And then also social communication. Social communication is simply monitoring what people are saying about you, or sentiment analysis. This is very easily done now when we can scrape the web and see what people are saying about our firm, especially with advances in AI. There's a lot of different services that help with coding, but now AI has even made it simpler for you to identify what people are saying, both positive and negative. And there can be scores. You can have a certain sentence be scored on basically how positive or how negative it is. And you can have it coded on the type of emotion that's being experienced or what's being said, and easily identify patterns and frequencies in which people are commenting about certain things associated with your product or your service. Okay, so now I want to talk back and talk about customer lifetime value. And I'm going to get back at that time and effort thing that you reminded me about. But before we get there, I'm going to give you a scenario, okay? And I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about this scenario. So imagine you're working for a bank and you have a customer who's been a customer for 15 plus years. Okay? This customer has 4 accounts with you, one being a credit card. The credit card has a $100 annual fee. Okay? So the customer has to pay this to use the card each year. And the customer spends, on the credit card, the average spending for a family of 4, whatever that amount is. Okay. So there's some information about the customer. The customer calls in and she calls the customer service center to report that a credit card offer that she loaded onto her account, which said that if you spend X dollars amount through this provider, you'll get a $120 cash back offer. Are you guys familiar with offers on credit cards? So like how you add them. Do you guys do this? So first off, do you guys have credit cards? Yes? Okay. So you know how some credit cards, they give you monthly offers. And so if you load them to your card, you can get, dollars back or points, whatever, for your purchases through them. Are you familiar with this? Yes? No? Okay, great. Okay. So the customer loads this offer and makes a purchase, a 10-day stay at a hotel that qualifies with the offer. So should be getting $120 back. Month goes by and the customer happens to check, oh, I was only awarded $24, not the $120. So the customer calls the customer service number and explains the situation to the employee, okay? In this case, it's a frontline employee, right? What we talked about, the importance of frontline employees. My first question to you is, what's the first thing you do if you're the employee after hearing this about the customer's experience?
Apologize.
Okay, you say apologize.
I mean, check it to see where the mistake could have been.
Okay, he says check it.
I would actually thank the customer for being a loyal customer over the last 15 years. Then I would apologize and then check what the issue is.
Okay, high five to that one. Woo! Okay, so do what she says, right? So this is this is what I would coach you all to do, is say something along the lines of, wow, thank you so much for your loyalty. 15 years is incredible. We really appreciate, your involvement or engagement with our company. And so something along those lines, right? And then say, I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this issue. Let me look into it, as Kevin says, and see what I can find out, right? Something simple like that, okay? So as Kevin said, you might need to confirm that the offer was loaded, that the terms, everything was met. And so let's assume that the employee does that. What does a minimum acceptable resolution look like in your minds, in thinking about this customer experience?
Keeping the customer.
Okay, so keeping the customer is minimum. What do you think this company should do? What should they give back? What, $96? Am I doing my, okay, so yes, so the customer found out that they actually got $24 when they should have been given $120. Yeah. I'm sorry?
Either meet expectations or exceed expectations.
So meet or exceed. So how are you doing that?
They can either match like the remaining amount that they owe, or provide something of a similar value, or provide something better.
Okay, so he says either match it or provide something better. What does an exceptional resolution look like?
Matching it and then waiving the fee for a year or two.
Okay, so he's given a lot more. Now keep in mind, again, this person's been a customer for over 15 years, okay? So I think this is a great loyalty building moment, right? Where we can truly make this bad situation turn into a positive, right? That's what the service recovery paradox is all about. Because at this point in time, the customer's probably not happy. And so this is a very critical time for the company to show they care and correct it. And so you might think, okay, how does this customer's lifetime value? They've got 15 years, they've got 4 accounts, they spend, I don't know how much a month, and then they've got the annual fee of $100 a year. Probably a decent lifetime value that should be considered. Now let me give you an example of the truth on what happened. This happened to me, if you can't tell. So, what happened? First off, when I noticed this, I went to the chat button on the bank account. I said, hey, I noticed this happened. I was only rewarded this instead of that. The employee went to check on their end, whatever they needed to check, and they said the offer had never been like applied to the account or loaded onto the account. And I said, well, no, that's not true. It was loaded and I confirmed it. Can you please check with IT? Wait, so you have to wait, right, with the chat. And the guy comes back. And at this point, we've been chatting for over 30 minutes. And it gets to the point where this person, and it is a person, it's not a chatbot, so I credit the company with that. But the person says, well, unless you have proof, there's nothing we can do. And I thought for a moment, and I said, this is crazy. Like, I'm spending time and effort. If we go back to those quality perceptions, I'm spending how much time chatting with this person about it? How much effort am I putting in? Now I got to go back and see if I have any proof of this. And so it wound up with the employee saying, well, unless you have any proof, there's nothing we can do. I thought for a moment, I said, you know what? I think I actually do have screenshots because I was booking this for work and I had to use my personal card because I'm paying for the hotel up front. And so the trip isn't for a couple months. And I thought, oh, no way could I use my Auburn University card to book this because I'm paying now. And if I don't end up going on the trip, getting reimbursed through a purchasing card would be a nightmare. So I remember taking screenshots of my purchase so I could show to our finance team, hey, I'm paying now because it was cheaper to pay now than to pay at the hotel, okay? And it was cheaper by several $100s. And so I wrote the guy back on the chat bot and said, okay, I think I have screenshots. Where do I send them? So he sends me a link. And so it's like a document upload link. And I said, okay, sounds great. I'll get them uploaded. Well, I was in the middle of finishing up something for work. And so I go back to it about 30 minutes later. What do you think happened?
I'm down.
The link expired. Yep. So now what do I have to do? Now I call and I have to re-explain my situation to the person that I get on the phone, who is clearly not the person I was chatting with. And again, going back to the time and effort, how much time and effort am I putting into this? And I have 4 screenshots now because I have the screenshot where it shows the check mark that says offer applied with my hotel purchase. I have a screenshot to show when that screenshot took place so that it fit within the timeline. But it also does show the bank name and then the offer applied check mark there. And then I have a statement of the credit card statement. But ultimately, I'm like, how much time and effort am I putting forth to call back again, to get a new link, to go through my phone, which has a zillion pictures, to find these images that I need to upload? So I probably spent 90 minutes. How am I feeling about that company right now?
Negatively.
Not very good. And the fact I was like, okay, clearly you don't trust me. I've been a customer for 15 years. I know for a fact that I uploaded it or that I had the offer. And first off, I rarely use these dang offers. But the only reason I did it is because our Associate Dean of Global Programs was like, oh, you should look and see if your card offers this. I was like, okay. So I did it. But anyhow, so I'm not feeling very good right now about this company. And so what they did is they issued a ticket to investigate it, and then they would get back to me when they made a decision. Mind blown right now at this point. I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm a customer who spends, okay, I have 4 accounts with y'all. I spend $100 a year on just this annual fee. Let's just say, I don't know what my average credit card bill is, but let's just say it's a decent amount. How much money are you making on me now? And I'm in my 40s. Most people don't really change banks a whole lot. So if I die at like 85, you're gonna have me for a customer for another 40 years. The annual fee is roughly equivalent to this reward fee. What in the world is happening? Like, I'm thinking about this as I'm having this experience. But yeah, I'm not very happy about that. So I think ultimately this experience illustrates, one, customer recovery and service recovery is so critical, right? This rep could have changed my experience. And rather than me being upset about it, I could have been delighted about it if they just simply, oh, yep, we're done, we'll take care of it. Nope, that's not what happened. Yes,
If you don't mind me asking, who was it?
I'll tell you after class. I'll show you the screenshots too. But anyhow, so I'm really ticked off and I'm just annoyed. But anyhow, they could have done something about it and they didn't. And I think this illustrates the importance of a couple things. One, frontline employees, right? Frontline employees are the face of the company. And so now I've made some really bad attributions about the employees and I've made some really bad attributions about the company. I also think, they could have reinforced trust here. They could have reinforced my loyalty. Instead, they have accelerated my dissatisfaction and likelihood of defection. And I've already looked into another bank, which I'm probably going to switch to.
Did you on the phone? Did you tell them that you were considering changing banks because of this experience?
You know what? I don't think I did. I think I was so mad I wasn't thinking about those things.
Something similar. That's what I told them.
So next week when I call to check in, I will say that and let you know. Remind me to give you an update. But ultimately, because the quality of the recovery can matter more than just the failure itself. And so I just was really shocked that, in this case, the company did not seem to be trained on customer lifetime value. And I just was floored. So let's talk about customer lifetime value. So what is it? So customer lifetime value is essentially the value of the customer over his or her lifetime with a given firm. And it can be calculated in a variety of different ways. Okay? So there's no single formula to customer lifetime value. And the one that I have here is the same one that's in your Starbucks case. And so it's historical, it's based on prior purchases, it's segmented, it talks about calculating customer lifetime value for different groups of customers. Sometimes you calculate it, based on different marketing channels. And so it looks at calculating this the overall lifetime value based on current and past purchases. Now there's other ways too. There are ways that might take into account the overall cost of servicing the customer. So you're looking at, not only the amount of money that they're bringing into your firm, but you're taking that and subtracting, the cost it is or the cost to serve that customer over that same time frame. So there's some that look at profit margins. There's some even more advanced customer lifetime value predictions that use predictive analytics to look at, you know, what is the future based on, and again, they're using like machine learning and now probably AI is involved, but to look at, okay, what are the trends in this person's purchase frequency or habit, and use those sort of trends to predict future behavior. And so very, very different ways to calculate this, and so companies do things differently. But the one in your book is this more historical version. So in this case, what are we looking at? We're looking at calculating first the average purchase value. So think of this as kind of like the average transaction size or the average dollars spent. So revenue in a time period divided by the number of purchases in that same time period. Then you have your frequency rate. So how often are they purchasing? Okay, calculated by the number of purchases divided by the number of unique customers. Okay. Then you have your average value. So the first two multiplied by each other. And I want to make sure you understand that you need to have an apples to apples comparison here. So your rates need to be the same. So if one is in weekly and the other is in monthly or yearly, you got to make them all be on the same, schedule there. So you calculate customer value, and then you look at lifespan. Now, I think in the textbook, or in the case, they provide the typical lifespan of the customer. And if you were to get an exam question on that, I would do that as well. So you know the average lifespan for a customer, and so then you take this number and multiply it by that number to get you customer lifetime value. So let's give you an example of this. Your book, or your case, I keep referring it to the book, but it's the case. The case, I think, groups customers up based on satisfaction level and asks you to complete customer loyalty or lifetime value calculations based on these satisfaction levels. Here's a question I'm going to ask you that is very common too. Is our loyalty program worth it? In other words, do our loyalty members have a higher lifetime value than our non-loyalty members? And so what you would do in this case is, if you're given the average transaction amount, okay, and the number of purchases per year is 4, that means, and I'm going to say, make sure this is on a per year basis, okay? You might see monthly, or you might see semi-annually. It needs to be converted to a year if this is customer value in a year. So you have customer value per year is 25 times 4 versus 40 times 6. And the average life of a non-member is much shorter than a loyalty club member. So again, we're talking life as a customer. And so then here we see that at the end of the day, there's a decent sized difference in customer lifetime value. Okay, so your loyalty club members are bringing in $2,650 more than your non-members. So very important to understand customer loyalty and to know their lifetime value, because this is who we want to ensure, going back to that 80-20 rule that we talked about, we want to make sure that our most critical customers are feeling valued, are satisfied, because they're ultimately the ones who are likely bringing in the most money to our firm. So with that said, I'm going to end it because your next little mini exam opens up next week, I believe. So this will be the last bit of content that will occur before the exam. I'll put a note out on Canvas about the content that's going to be included on the mini exam. So I'll hopefully do that. Well, it'll probably be tomorrow actually, because I have some meetings this afternoon. So with that said, any questions before we leave and depart? Looks like a beautiful day outside. So hopefully you get to be outside, maybe get some vitamin D, enjoy the nice pollen. And I'll see you next week, and happy Easter for those celebrating.